is the UK Brand Show with Penny Williams and Mark Challoner.
Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And good morning, Pen.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. I'm giggling because the last call I just did, it's the classic. It is honestly the word of now 2021 as well is you're on mute.
Yeah, exactly.
This poor lady was sort of trying to find her button and she kept going in and out and oh dear.
It's become
But
a new
I'm good.
phrase in the English language, hasn't it? It wasn't here a year ago.
Yeah, and I need to just check there's nothing behind me that's erotic. Have you seen that picture?
No?
Oh, it was on the BBC website of a lady that was doing a Zoom call, and in the background was a dildo on the wall. It's viral.
That's
So
hilarious.
always check what's on your shelf behind you.
No, I don't
And
think
I
anything
see you've got
incriminating.
an on-air sign. I'm
Yes.
jealous, Mark. I want the sign.
Yes. Well, we'll have to get you on. So this week, Pen, we're going to talk about. Do you remember the last show I talked about the masterclass I
Yes,
did
you
for
did.
my news association, and that was sort of just the first part of it. And we've had two more parts since the last show, so I'm going to give a summary of those parts today.
It was really good. I enjoyed it last time, so I've been looking forward to this one, Mark.
Thank you. So I'll tell you what. Let me put my screen up. Let me share my screen,
Super.
if I may. There we go. Share. And we'll put that into play mode. There we are. Can you see that?
I can indeed.
Excellent. So let me get on with it. As I say, I did this masterclass for INMAR, which is that website at the bottom, which is the International News Media Association. And you can go on there and check out lots more of what I'm talking about later if you wish. But it was all about leadership and transformation opportunities as we go out of COVID. And COVID's only part of the story, but irrespective of COVID, what should we be looking for in leadership and transformation opportunities in the future, both from technology, from our staff, from our structure, et cetera, and that really was all around the pillars of that masterclass. So you can see the first week, which is what we discussed last time, was all about structure and focus and what type of leadership we need in the future, which is really crucial. And then the second and third weeks were all about using technology to drive transformation. And, with the automation and things like automation and machine learning and AI, does it still remain a people business? And this is not just about news media associations. This is about everyone. So this is very much about whether you're a small business or a large business in whatever sector, this is about you. So what I thought I'd do, I put together my take on pillars number 2 and 3 in a little presentation today for this, because I thought it would be interesting to everyone. So what I want to refer to is mainly a presentation which was done through a company called Ringier Axel Springer, who are one of the biggest media companies in Europe. And there used to be two, Ringier and Axel Springer, and they joined forces. And they did a brilliant presentation on people versus automation and artificial intelligence in today's modern organization. So again, this is nothing to do with the fact it's media. This is very much appropriate to media, but appropriate to anyone, whether you're a small business or large. The principles are exactly the same in terms of where you should be positioning yourself in the future. So first thing to say is that what seems to come across really strong to me is that automation and AI does indeed pose the biggest risk to business enterprises. But that's only half the story. That's appropriate to those that fail to embrace it. So it per se, it's not a risk at all if you embrace it and use it to your advantage, because automation, AI, machine learning is not going to go away. Every time you click on Amazon and buy something, you're using some form of artificial intelligence. You're probably led there in the first place because it's recommended something for you to buy. And it's using all your data to automate services appropriate to you. That's just one example, of course, of a million. So it is important to say that we do need to embrace automation and artificial intelligence going forward. So, and it's also worth the effort, because this guy from Axel Springer was saying that the entire homepage of the site, which is the biggest Polish news site, is managed automatically and personalized, but they still employ lots and lots of people. Doesn't mean to say that they're all going to go away. And what he said was, by using AI and automation effectively within their organization, they are saying that they're getting 4 times more articles clicked on. Four more articles are able to be distributed, daily. They can get more content out to people. They're getting 20 times higher content diversity. And that's largely because they employ people who are diverse, and we'll come to that later about diversity and inclusion in businesses. But also the automated service, which is being controlled by humans still, allows for them to get much higher diversity of content alongside the thing about 4 times more articles being distributed. They're finding, therefore, they're getting up to 100% more engagement when the stories are personalized, which is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And that has encouraged 24% more loyal users. In their case, subscriptions, they've gone up by 24% because of all the things they've done through automating and making things personalized. So what they're saying is it gives in return a much more higher quality editorial, and they've won multiple industry awards every year for the past sort of 4 or 5 years because of it. And they've become the most trusted and cited media brand in Poland. So what they're doing is really, really good. Now, there are some people who might look at this and go, well, how many people have lost their jobs because of this? And, we all out of a job because of it ultimately. And we remember that conversation we had about Ray Kurzweil from the last show. We talked about this guy from Google who's predicted the future, that in 2045, humans will be a subspecies of robots. Well, there's a lot of people may not agree with that, but essentially what he's saying is automation, is not going away, and we do need to embrace it. But when you do embrace it in the right way, this is what happens. This is what you can do. You can make it effective for your business. And it doesn't mean to say that everyone is going to be out of a job because of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what Axel Springer have done, they've got this pyramid for the foundations of successful automation. So they start at the bottom first and say the most important thing with the staff, again, whether you're big or you're small, is data literacy. There's so many people who are afraid of data.
Yeah.
Like, it's for an expert. I don't understand it, including from the CEO down. The CEO doesn't really understand it, and therefore nothing happens lower down the chain because there's no directive to do anything about it. So what they did, recognizing this fact, and it was appropriate to them, even as one of the biggest media companies in Europe, from the CEO down, there was a lack of understanding of what data is all about and what it can do for us. So what they did to tackle data literacy is they did an education process. So with management, what they did, they sent them on a coding boot camp. So an external company, wasn't their own, they sent people off, and there were these things exist. You can go off on a boot camp to learn the basics of why coding's important, why it should be interested to you. You have to learn the ins and outs of it. You employ specialists to do that, but just to have an understanding of what coding's all about. And they did reverse mentoring with their tech staff who are in the business already. So they're putting people together, really breaking down the silos from management down. Then as far as the whole company is concerned, beyond management, they did company-wide training programs. So, over 30% of the workforce passed a basic data literacy training course. They made it compulsory that everybody had to do this. And over 500 staff passed a data analytics training course. Again, just the basics, just to get them to an understanding of what it's all about. So as I said there, they became more of a data-driven company through this obligatory training when you join the company, or whether you're existing member of staff, you have to become literate in basic stuff about data and data analytics. Most of the programs were run by their own staff. So of course, there are people who look after data who are in their building already, who who can take on the role of educating people about how they should be taking the first step. And of course, what they said is that built camaraderie between the staff. People that you may not have, if you're a bigger company and there's a guy walking down the corridor and you think, oh yeah, he's that weirdo guy who's just massively tech focused and he's a geek. Well, that broke all these barriers down, because actually he's a nice guy when you speak to him. And it just broke the silos down between people. Then they did these hackathons, and people may have heard of these things, where you get lots of business people together from, in their case, all their editorial staff, their IT staff, their commercial staff, the data people. They all join forces to talk about what products should be developed going forward for our audience. And they had people talking about where they are in their business, and they start to put heads together to say, look, you don't need any knowledge of IT and in-depth knowledge of data here. You just need an idea, because there's someone on the team in the hackathon who's going to have that knowledge, and that's where they will feed in. Let's just break the barriers down, and let's just talk some blue sky thinking. There's an old familiar phrase, but it's still true. And let's talk about how we can get together and do new stuff for the future. And they, in their case, had 100 people, 24 hours of fun over a weekend. And multiple products were born as a result of these hackathons, stuff which they wouldn't have probably developed otherwise. So it was a really cool way of just getting people on board, and they feel like they own it then, and they feel like they understand it, and they get more out of the people, because it's not just some mystery to them that they just shy away from in the future. So you tackled it head on is the important thing.
Not something you do on Zoom, you do it face to face.
Well, ideally you do it face to face, but I guess there are ways you could do it on Zoom in the short term, for sure. It's not the ideal thing, and we all know that. We both said, haven't we? Networking with people face to face is a totally different thing and a much better thing. But at the same time, you do what tools are in front of you and what you can and can't do practically yourself. So then they moved to this tackle this bit about how did he create a data-driven culture, having educated people about literacy. And they created these cross-functional teams. How do they do that in terms of the data architecture, what it actually looks like as a structure in the company, and how they become more machine learning friendly? So they said what they used to do so what they found was that in the old world, before they did all this tackling head on and trying to create this data-driven culture, they found that new roles were coming to the fore. So if you look at where this dotted line is, on the left of it is what you had before. So you had upper management, totally separated in a little bubble. And you had, on the other side, the editors in chief, in their case, their media. So editors in chief, editors, journalists, and all the myriad of people at the lower level jobs. And what the new world, the data-driven world, came as a result of the hackathons and the getting togethers and the data literacy course, etc., was that they needed people doing new things. And that generated like business intelligence analysts, software engineers, ad ops and ad production managers, all a different focus. But what they did was, by doing this too, they made sure they broke down the barriers, and they changed it to this, whereby everyone became cross collaborating. So upper management was suddenly exposed to all those other people, whereas they weren't before. And people became more of a collaborative role rather than just a this is how it's done role. And it's just changed the dynamics of the company completely. People still respect the people who are in upper management, but they also respect the fact that they will come. Do you remember I talked about this? I think the last show we talked about this restaurant in Italy, the Michelin star restaurants, that the owner still takes time to play football with the staff every day, and he lays the table and cleans the spoons and stuff. He's available to people.
So important.
It's humility. Humility. And this is what this is created. They said that, it was ironic. They said that it created a more humble environment. Yeah. So the logic behind all of this and where the sort of brain bit fits in is that they said that previously they were trying to build everything internally, and everything was focused on, we must do everything ourselves. And all the resource and mental power was taken up doing that. But what they've realized now is, hang on, technology changes all the time. Why do we want to build and buy ourselves technology, which it's probably going to be obsolete by the time we even get it to market. So
Yeah.
there are people out there who provide this skill and provide these platforms and the right. So why don't we therefore buy technology for, in their case, 80% of the time? And in terms of building stuff ourselves, we'll just make it 20% instead of 100% in future.
Yeah.
Because when they do that, what it also does is then allows you that 80% of the time to apply creative thinking to the data science, what it is you want to build, all the hackathon stuff, what results from those, how do you get cross collaborating teams working together, how do you become agile in your organization. And it also allows them to use a portion of their time now for researching into what they should be doing as a result of all the applied thinking. So it's changed the way, the logic, they actually process their technology and their data skills. And again, what they said about this is that it's important for the hiring and the project and the budget planning going forward. If you're hiring people, you want to be people who understand all of this.
Yeah.
Who can not necessarily understand the ins and outs, but understand this is the logic to what we're trying to do here. It's not about a company who, there's your commercial manager, there's your IT manager, and they all work totally separately and don't talk to each other. This is all about what a modern organization should be like in terms of its processing skills and its logic to business going forward. It's about creative and applied thinking and freeing up time for that and bringing in people who understand that. And talking to hiring people, the top bit of the pyramid is the human-centric automation. And this is the key bit as far as I'm concerned. And this is such a great line this guy used. He said, we always bear in mind, we always keep humans in charge to lower the risk and to build trust. And I'll explain what that means. He was saying that what we should do is we should employ machines to handle the mundane, the data heavy, the boring tasks that people are ill-suited to. People at the end of the day are creative beings. And just giving them boring tasks to do day in, day out is just not going to get much from them. And they're going to hate working there. So get machines to do all that stuff, but free people up to focus on the creative and the complex work. There's still a role for people. It's not about machines replacing us. But they said before we even start with our staff, and we've mentioned this before, Pen, the first and foundational principle they work to is that they recognize that of all projects you take on, data projects, IT projects, the fraction of successful data projects is small. Only 20% of all the projects you're likely to take on will probably succeed. A huge amount of them will fail. And that really means that what you don't go there for is looking for the scapegoats when something goes wrong. Oh, you're rubbish, out you go. It's only a mistake if you make it twice or you never learn from the first time. Yeah. So they work in the principle that, look, there's no such thing as a failure here. There's a thing as learning as we go. As long as the process and the logic behind what you were doing was sound, we're going to fail most of the time. And it struck me, these guys, Angry Birds, everybody knows these. It was produced by a Scandinavian company called Rovio, and Angry Birds was the 40-second project they put out there before this one.
Oh, wow.
40-second project.
Didn't know that.
All the others were failures.
Yeah.
And the 40-second project was a success and a massive, massive global success. So it's a real good lesson. And feeding into what we're going to do in our next show, I saw this. We're going to have on our next show, Pen. We've got the CEO of this company called Wilson Cook, who are a big brand digital and marketing company, one of the leaders in this space. And I noticed on their website, they use this line. They say they create meaningful, brave, I like that word, brave, brand experiences by fusing strategy, creativity, and technology, and using an agile approach. Everything we're talking about today, really. But I noticed this is a screen grab from their corporate video online on their website. And I like that line of use.
The website is just brilliant.
It's great, isn't it? Yeah, everyone should have a look at this Wilson Cook.
Very advanced agency, I'd say.
Yeah. And this is a screen grab from their little corporate video. You have to fail in order to practice being brave. So it sounds to me, and we'll talk about this with their CEO in a couple of weeks, but
Looking forward to that.
yeah, this sounds exactly dovetailing into what we were talking about on the masterclass.
Yeah.
So this is how they say they use humans interacting with the automation at Axel Springer. They say, we take, for example, a weather forecasting service. Now, the weather forecasting service, they will take a feed from, say, BBC. You can incorporate that into your service developer kit, your SDK, for when you're developing new stuff. It's an easy thing to do. It's just a line of code, and it links in and gives a service. So what will happen is they can use automation for that. They can use a bot to generate a draft of what their own personalized service will be for their area or whatever it might be. It goes back to an editor to review and approve it. And the editor looks at it and goes, yeah, that's good, tick. And it goes off to their content management system for distribution. However, for a more engaging thing, so this is a customer service line where a user's got a complaint. So what they'll do, firstly, is the user will request something to a chatbot. The chatbot will paraphrase the request and say, is this what you mean? Customer will come back and go, blah, blah, blah. And then the chatbot then will refer it back to the company, to a human being who will get it in their inbox or get an alert to say, you've got a request from this person here, blah, blah, blah. And they will, what it does, it allows them to have some of the basic information before they actually speak to the person direct. Mm. But the point and the important bit of all of this is that those two green things are human beings in the process. It's not all about automation. So it's back to what we said at the start. It's about using automation to help and develop what we do as humans, not to replace us, because a human input is still massively important.
Definitely.
So when we talk about personalization, preserving things, again, this is another example of, they have a system within their content management system which provides an easy to use, anyone can use it, you don't need specialist skills internally to do it, whereby you can override and win trust of your staff. So what would happen here, what this is in their content management system, they have lots of articles which are ready to go online on their website, and the editor will go through and go, well, I like that one, so they'll tick it in red to say that they know, that the machine then knows that that's one for publishing. So the machine's done the initial bit, as we said in the previous slide. We think that these things should go out online for distribution, but the human still has the final say. The editor still has the final say. Like that article, don't think that's relevant anymore. That was yesterday's news or whatever. So the control is still there. And in the same way, the editor can mark those articles as important. So they can not only say that, yes, I want that published, but they can also say how important it is, so that, you know, they know how many people are actually clicking on stuff already, where they're coming from, using automation again, and they can know themselves, intuition, which a robot wouldn't know, what is likely to get more engagement from their audience. So they can say, I like that article, but it's not a high priority. I like this article, but it's really, really key. It's really engaging today. And that's what the machine can't learn. So again, they have an input to say what's important and how important it is. And what comes also in here, which is possibly dovetailing into the third week of this masterclass we did, is fairness and diversity. Axel Springer say these are must-have considerations for their business going forward. And the good example here they've said is a lot of companies are just about getting clickbait. Now, I'll mention no names, but there's one major media company I could name at this moment, and I did some work with these guys, and I tried my best to get them to shift off this focus. But if you go onto their Facebook page, for example, there are long ads before, 30-second TV ads which have just been lifted lazily and put onto their website before you'll be able to read an article. No one wants to see a 30-second ad on a mobile phone on a social media site. And lots of pop-ups and lots of click here for, do you want to see a gallery of 10 things, blah, 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 and you click it, you've got to click every time to see one more picture, more picture. Yeah. And it's just clickbait, and it's just awful. And ultimately, it's just going to destroy your trust with your audience. So that's what this is saying, really. They're saying that the recipe for clickbaits and erosion of that trust is all about just concentrating on click-through rates and your total reach in the ad industry and pop-ups, etc. It's all terrible stuff. So instead, what we should do, a recipe for quality editorial and building those loyal readers, is looking at the time spent they read on the articles using automation. Where did they come from? Was it on an iPhone? Was it on an iPad? Was it from a MacBook? Whatever. What's the viewable ad emphasis and what are the eCPMs? That actually dictates, how important something is in terms of how long you're exposing people to an ad, etc. Not just putting a 30-second ad on there for which nobody wants. And this is the key there, content diversity. So what you must do, and their point is, we have to reflect as a company, and again, doesn't matter you're big or small, as a company, we should be reflecting in terms of what we do and who we employ to do it, the diversity that's in our audience out there, who we're trying to reach, because only then we can reflect what it is we're about and who we should be trying to reach with the tools that reflect that. And that's why they're saying it's important for hiring new staff. And interestingly, they've said that if you look at bias with artificial intelligence, it's really a reflection of bias in society. Society exists today. And they're saying, what they're saying is, we've got a biased society, you've seen this week, in the past week, Marcus Rashford, the Man United footballer, has been targeted online by racist abuse, etc. And there is an element, it may be small, but it's an element of racist bias in society, because it's come to light. Lots more other footballers have said, I've had lots of abuse online, blah, 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 to name just one area of bias. So if you are, reflecting that within the machine models, because data and machine models and robots will only take the data that's fed into it. So if you're starting off with taking information from a biased society, the robots will pick up on that bias automatically.
Yeah.
Not you wanting to do so, not you trying to do so, but it'll just feed back and become really a vicious circle. So all these machine learning models, they are trained on biased data, and therefore it reinforces the bias in society, and it never changes. So what Axel Springer said to tackle this, another role that's being created, they now have an AI ethicist as a new role they've identified in this new world. Someone who can actually infiltrate and say, does that reflect who we are as a brand, what we're putting out there from a content point of view and a diversity of content? I think it's so important. And do you know what? I'd never even give that a thought, Pen, about a role such as this. But you can see how it's so important.
Yeah.
Really, really important. And that led to a further presentation we had at a masterclass from a New Zealand company called Stuff, big media company in New Zealand. And they are probably at the forefront, them and the Financial Times in London, I say at the forefront of diversity and inclusion in our business. Because what they said is, we always keep humans in charge, as we said earlier, to lower the risk and to build trust, not erode it. And they said that our staff should be reflective of the communities and customers we serve. And this company Stuff was saying, they showed examples of staff that work at their company. They have a big focus on making sure diversity and inclusion is part of their fabric of their business, not just something they pay lip service to. And they described the stories of these people. I don't know what they are now off the top of my head, but they all had great stories, these people they showed, whereby by focusing that ethos, if you like, in the company, you provide work with meaning for people. We know they say it's the right thing to do. They know that there is a power when they build diversity into the everyday. And also embracing things like disability brings a new angle, a new focus and creativity into the company they weren't thinking before. And let's get this right. This is not about saying we must employ disabled people because we think it's the right thing to do. They're employing disabled people because it reflects society. There are disabled people out there. We should have that reflecting not only internally with the business of people working around and with people who are disabled, but also getting them to reflect back out to our communities what it is we want to try and say to reflect the communities in which we serve. And they said from an internal, really simple examples, they were saying even from an internal point of view, if you're, so take this guy here, he was the first guy they had who was in a wheelchair. And they said just the simple things of changing the way we think about the way we operate on a daily basis. He said, we have a big kitchen and everybody goes and makes their own coffee every day. Only when this guy turned up, we actually thought about, actually, we need to change where all the coffee jars are at a level where he can reach without having to ask someone to get it off the shelf.
Yeah.
And they said, it sounds like such a minor thing to worry about, but it's really, really important that we just take time out to think about the people that we're employing and the diversity of people and what that means. And then you can start to look at the outward focus of what we should be focused on externally. And they're saying from their point of view, their ethos is about this diversity, be it gender, ethnicity, beliefs, abilities, experiences. They all bring a new lens by which we can learn, we can connect, and we can grow. And they were saying it's not about taking people on just because they are black or they're disabled or whatever. It's taking people with big skills in those areas, but people perhaps may not, because this bias in society, which we didn't really think about, which we're trying to be biased, but it's just there. And the machine learning is picking up from that bias. It's about breaking that down and saying, we need to reflect what it is we are, who we are as a company, and what we're trying to achieve and who we're trying to reach. And it's a great line, isn't it? I love that line.
It's a very good line, yeah.
Really, really good. So, and then the FT, I mentioned the FT in London and what they do in terms of diversity. And I think this is just possibly the best idea I've seen for years. So they have a Financial Times board, all the senior execs who've been there probably for many years, and they all feed into the board, blah, blah, blah. What they also have is a next generation board. And it's a global, diverse team drawn from all areas of the business, of all walks of life, which aims to provide a fresh perspective. These guys, I think they're all under 30. So they provide a fresh perspective on the company strategy. So they're dealing with all the stuff that the main board deal with, but they help develop new ideas with new thinking and new slants. And the leader of this next generation board has a place on the main board, and they feed back to the main board what it is the next generation board are saying about the company and what it's doing and what its policies are and what focuses it's concentrating on at the moment, or what's their take on it all. And very often they're different from what the main board might be thinking, because the main board tend to be older, not as diverse maybe. And I think it's just a brilliant idea. And depending on who you are, but don't you think every company should think about doing this?
Oh, definitely. I've just screenshot that because I just think it's a fantastic idea, and I'm certainly going to advise some of my customers to consider that, because I don't know, a few years ago, there used to be this thing of a lot of CEOs were engaging graduates to be a pseudo CEO, but a lot of it was to help them understand the digital world, social media. You know, it's the time when everyone still knew they had to be on social media, but didn't really know how to use it.
Yeah.
This is a sort of the next level of that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is.
We know.
Whoever come up with this idea is a genius. I mean, it's just a simple idea. It was brilliant.
But because of the pandemic as well, there is this, that change has been accelerated by about 5 years because of the pandemic. And we all know life's going to change, and we all know we need to adapt what we're doing in our companies. This gives you an edge, doesn't it, to do that?
It does indeed.
Love it.
So anyway, it's a great idea. So in summary, these are the 5 things which I found on this masterclass were essentially the principles of successful human-centric automation. Number 1, data literacy, data-driven culture must become before automation AI, but it's important that everyone gets on board with it, understands what you're doing, and you take what the actual Springer people did, hackathons, education, to ensure that literacy. Focus first on high impact, low risk use cases. This is where all your existing IT staff can help build this of what they think that would be, and You can feed that into other areas, breaking down the silos again, having multi-disciplinary teams to help make that work. AI is a tool to power and to boost human creativity and productivity, not to replace us. You just got to choose the metrics to optimize wisely and understand the implications. So make sure your KPIs or all your key performance indicators are there to tell people whether they're on track and what, and you can work that out between everyone. That's where the management will feed in now to the collaboration process. And then AI ethics must be treated seriously. Yeah. And that includes D&I, the diversity and inclusion are really, really important for future success. And the final thing to say on it is what we must do is hire people who understand and subscribe to these principles and to reflect who we are as a company, what we do, what we stand for, and who we want to reach. And that was a summary of it all. And I thought it was really great. Oh, one final thing is just to repeat something I said after the last show. I mentioned this. If anyone wants to download this, it's a free download from Reuters Institute. It's called Heart and Mind. It's written by a professor there I know really well called Lucy Kung. And she's written this thing called Heart and Minds, Harnessing Leadership, Culture and Talent to Really Go Digital. So if you're sitting there watching this saying, I'm not really into digital, don't understand it, here's a great first step into why you should get involved in it. And it'll just be your first step to why you should be going down that journey and looking at how you shape your leadership, how you structure it, how things like transformation is done through automation, and what type of people, more importantly, this is all about what type of people you should be hiring for the future.
So true. It's all about people. Whatever business you're in, it's all about the people, isn't it? They are your culture, they are your customer service, they are your product in so many different ways. And we forget that. We do forget.
We do forget that. So anyway, that was a summation of the masterclass.
I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Good.
Great way to start the new year.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, it was a good thing, good timing to do the masterclass actually, just as people start to get back into a new world, as they're thinking about maybe COVID moving off away from our immersion, if you like.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time to just stop and think about what it is we should be doing to provide ourselves that modern organization for future focus. So there we go. So as I mentioned, so in the next show, we're going to be talking to this guy called Mark Law, and he's the CEO of this company called Wilson Cook, who are a big brand digital and marketing specialist. And we're going to talk about if you are a small, medium enterprise and you're not really, don't feel you're particularly digital at this moment and not seeing the benefits of digital and automation or AI or all that sort of stuff, we're going to talk about, what his views are on all of that and what his views are in terms of leadership, the need for strong leadership and knowledge of digital and what factors make a good leader. Is there a shift in what we need from leadership skills pre and post COVID? And, what about knowledge of things like customer engagement and analytics and content strategy and diversity and inclusion? So if all that is foreign to anyone listening to this, where do you begin? That's what the next show is all about.
Brilliant. Timing is fantastic. So I looked at Mark's website and I'm very excited to chat with him because I think it's going to be really interesting to see his view on the future and how we all need to be flexible and change what we're doing.
Yeah. So that'll be our next show then.
Fantastic.
And then just the next show after that, just to preempt everything very quickly in our 2 sentences, we're going to talk about something which we've been, I've certainly been looking at recently about. It'll be a year since we've all gone online, since we've all been locked out in some form or other. And what it's done to us, what it's done to our brain, things like, we keep forgetting stuff and our brains miss the chit chat of networking and being in the office, and our attention spans have got shorter and our sleep cycles are confused, and, there's all sorts of bad things. And there's some good things too. And we'll talk about all of that lot.
I tick all those boxes, Mark, so I'm looking forward to that too.
Good.
And just to remind everyone, there's the UKBS brand website where you can listen to other shows that we've done in the past. We've had some great interviews and there's some great content on there, which is at the ukbrandshow.co.uk.
Indeed, we have. So that's it for this week, Pen.
Thank you, Mark.
I'm actually very envious of you because you look like you're in the office.
I am. I get to go out every day.
Is there anybody in there with you?
No. That's why I have no mask on. I think my mask is in the other room.
Is it just literally you?
It is literally me in this particular office, yes, because my other hat is I work for a charity and we are key workers, so I'm still going to work at the moment.
Well, I think your charity should be something we should have as a guest talk on for a future show.
That might be good to do because we've got Dame Carol Black is putting a paper for the government, which will be published in February. So that might be good timing to talk about the sector.
Yeah,
my charity.
I'd be interested as well. I'm sure a lot of the people listening would be interested in knowing how a charity has coped through the COVID era. You know, what's changed for you? Has your business practices changed? Have you lost loads of money because of it all? You know, are people still donating to charity? All that sort of stuff would be really interesting. It'd be a really good story, I'm sure.
Yeah, love to do that, Mark.
Good, great stuff. So that's it. We'll see you next week, Pen.
See you next week. Take care.
Bye for now.